Warning, this video contains truth bombs that will alter your view of reality. White people, listen up. This is going to be hard to hear, but the truth often is.
The Caucasian people are not a natural species of human beings.
It turns out that the white race was created just 6,000 years ago by an evil black scientist named Yakub. Through a system of eugenics, he was able to separate the white man from the original black man. Now, when I first heard about this, I brushed it off as complete nonsense. But then I started looking into it, and it made way too much sense. This revelation completely turned my life upside down, and to tell you the truth, I spiraled out of control. I relapsed on nitrous oxide and got addicted to rhino pills from the gas station. A deadly combination. One night I did too much and ended up in the hospital. But when I woke up, I had an epiphany. I realized that I couldn't just keep it inside. I had to tell the world the truth. The truth about Yakub, the creator of the white race.
Yakub, maker and creator of the devil.
The truth of Yakub was first revealed to humanity through Wallace Fard Muhammad, the founder of the Nation of Islam, or NOI, and was later expanded on by his successors Elijah Muhammad and Louis Farrakhan. In order to fully understand the Yakubian lore, we need to go back about 76 trillion years, when the universe was nothing but, well, nothing. It was just darkness. Out of that darkness, God, or Allah, created himself in a process that lasted 6 trillion years. When he was finally done working on himself, he created the rest of the universe. Now here's the thing, Allah wasn't the only God. He was actually the first in a long line of gods. After creating the universe, he also created 24 imams, or black scientists, to help him out, and each one of these imams would take turns being God for a little while. Okay, so fast forward another 4 trillion years, and one of these black scientist gods hated the planet so much that he decided to blow it up. He dug a giant hole into the center of the Earth and placed a bunch of dynamite inside the Earth's core, and yeah. The planet was then split in two, which would become the Earth and the Moon. Before this big split, humanity was divided into 13 tribes, but only one of them survived the explosion, the tribe of Shabazz. The survivors eventually settled in the land of Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and since white people didn't exist yet, the world was pretty much in complete harmony. This isn't to say that civilization was perfect, but the white man didn't invent League of Legends or tuna casserole yet, so it was undoubtedly much better than it is today. But still, in order for the original man to be perfect, he had to come face to face with the evil inside him and defeat it. And that evil would be brought about by a man named Yakub, or as I like to call him, the Yak. Yakub was born in Mecca, and he had a massive head. Okay, I mean, this mother sucker looked like Black Megamind. Here's a quote from one of Elijah Muhammad's books. He was a man, born a black scientist with a big head. He had a great big head, and they used to call him the Big Head Yakub because his head contained so much wisdom, or brains of wisdom, that he was called the Big Head Yakub, meaning he had a lot of wisdom. Yeah, it's not really the most elegantly written book I've read, but then again, the only other book I've read is Mind Equals Blown by Matthew Santoro, so I don't really have much to go on. By age 6, the Yak had already decided that he was going to take over the world. Years later, while studying at university, Yakub made a shocking discovery that would change the world forever. Okay, so basically, inside of the original man, there was 2 genes, or germs. And one of these germs could be separated from him and used to create new races of people.
In the germ of the black man, the life germ, Yakub saw the brown germ. And he said that if he could separate that brown germ, he could drive it into its last stage and clothe it with flesh and give it form and expression. And that Mr. Yakub did.
The Yak figured out a technique to dilute the black man down into a lesser species that would be easy for him to control. He called this technique grafting, which was basically just eugenics, and he could use it to build that army. At age 18, he started recruiting people to help him get started with his experiments. So he basically started a cult and would entice people by telling them that they would have riches and slaves beyond their imagination. Before too long, Yakub had a following of tens of thousands. But he also started getting the attention of the police, who considered Yakub and his followers a threat. So they started rounding them up and throwing them in prison. All the jails in Mecca were overflowing with Yakub's disciples. When the king of Mecca got word about what Yakub was up to, he wasn't surprised at all.
You have to understand that all of Yakub's actions were predicted long before his birth.
This is Oki. He's one of the world's foremost experts on Yakub.
8,400 years before Yakub's birth, the wise black scientists prophesied that one of their own would bring devils onto the earth, who would rule the planet for 6,000 years. The king of Mecca, being one of the scientists himself, was well aware of the prophecy.
The king knew he couldn't fight destiny, so instead of executing Yakub, he allowed him to carry out his experiments and even funded them, but he told him to get the hell out of Mecca and do it somewhere else. So Yakub, along with 59,999 of his followers, went to the island of Patmos off the coast of Greece. Once on the island, Yakub got together a team of doctors, engineers, and scientists to figure out the best way to create a new race.
Next week, something big is gonna go down, all right? I don't want to spoil anything, but tune in.
They implemented a strict system of eugenics, where darker-skinned babies would be eliminated and only the light-skinned ones could reproduce. This is also believed to be the origin of Planned Parenthood. Oh wow, look at that. It's time to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Displate. Now, as a big fan of putting stuff on my wall, I am super excited to work with Displate. They make these gorgeous metal posters that absolutely duke you on those lame paper ones you're used to. Check this out. Okay, the packaging is very cool. Ooh. So I went with a kind of a World War II theme, like a very retro theme, as you can see. My absolute favorite thing about Displate is their magnet mounting system, which just makes the whole process of putting them on your walls so easy. Even a dumb schmuck like me did it with ease. I can't believe there are over 2 million artworks available on Displate.com. From licensed stuff like Marvel and Star Wars to independent artists, they have so much cool stuff on here. Use the link in my description or my code Dantavius to get 2 Displates for 32% off or 3 or more Displates for 37% off. Thank you, Displate, for sponsoring this video. Now, where was I? Oh right, eugenics. With each new generation, the people's skin got lighter and lighter. After the first 200 years, the brown race was created from the black. This is your Arabs, your Turks, etc. 200 years after that, the red race came to be. This is your Indians, and also your Indians, the other type. According to Nation of Islam lore, Native Americans were expelled from India 16,000 years ago for breaking the laws of Islam. The next iteration was the yellow race, and so on and so forth.
That same process continued for 600 years, and at the end of that time, there was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed creature on our planet that is called the Caucasian.
This new race of quote-unquote people were completely devoid of the divine essence of Allah who created the universe. The evil conditions that brought them into the world made them naturally prone to aggression and violence. With each passing generation, the Yakubians became more and more psychopathic. And as if that wasn't bad enough, they were also taught tricknology.
Tricknology is the science of deception. The white devils used this practice to deceive and manipulate. It was through tricknology that the white man was able to divide and conquer Africa and the rest of the world.
When the new race of whites went back to Mecca, they immediately started causing problems. Friends started turning on each other, wars began to break out, and everybody was having gay sex. It was complete chaos. So the king deported the devils to the Caucasus Mountains, where they became even more feral. For 2,000 years, these Caucasians continued to devolve. They stopped wearing clothes and lived in caves, and they ate nothing but raw meat. The Neanderthals that we learned about in school are actually these people. Eventually, they would make their way west into what we now call Europe, where they invented the practice of gooning. Some of the whites, tired of living like savages, tried to graft themselves back into the black race, but They were too stupid to figure out the science and turned themselves into gorillas instead. According to Elijah Muhammad, all monkeys and apes come from this 2,000-year period. At the same time this was going on, Imam Shabazz, aka Abraham, like the one from the Bible, traveled from Mecca into Central Africa with some of his followers so that he could toughen them up for the hard times that were ahead. This was when black people started getting curly hair because of the rough conditions of the African jungles, and that's why we associate Africa with black people today. After 2,000 years of living like savages, Moses tried to civilize the white devils. He taught them how to read, how to wear clothes, and how to season their food. But the whites were so evil that Moses was having a hard time controlling them, and at one point he got so frustrated that he blew up 300 of them with dynamite. Eventually he was able to get through to them somewhat, and with Moses' guidance, the Caucasians began their dominion over the earth. Just like it says in the book of Revelation, "Behold a pale horse, his name is Death, and hell followed with him. Power was given unto him over 1/4 of the earth, to kill with the sword and famine and disease."
Just look at the evils the white man has done since he was grafted onto the world. Slavery, nuclear weapons, Emily in Paris.
Hookie's right. White empires have been invading, enslaving, and colonizing the rest of the world for thousands of years now. I can't think of any other race of people who have done that. And you guys are probably asking yourselves, why? Why did the black man need to suffer so much at the hands of these devils? Well, it's simple. It's so that the original man can finally purge all evil from himself and become perfect like God. Or at least that's my understanding. But listen, at the end of the day, I'm just some Yakubian schmuck whose brain is cooked from years of nitrous abuse. So I can't really understand this stuff too well. But here's Louis Farrakhan's explanation.
Why are you going to allow all this suffering? Because it's going to manifest human nature to its fullest, and it will test the people under evil to see whether evil is as productive in their lives as good. So that at the end of this experiment, each of them will know that evil is not the way that they should go, but you must choose righteousness.
Luckily for the black man, his suffering will soon come to an end, because Allah will come back and bring an apocalypse on the white man. Every devil on the planet will be wiped out, and the black man will take his rightful place as ruler of the earth. In fact, we're living in those times right now. The countdown to Armageddon started 400 years ago with the pirate and slave trader John Hawkins. Hawkins is one of the pioneers of the transatlantic slave trade. But what John Hawkins didn't realize is that by bringing the black man to America, he was bringing in a Trojan horse. He was bringing about his own destruction. It's just like it says in the book of Genesis. "Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions." What this means is that after 400 years of slavery in America, a new God will come that will teach the black man his history and set in motion the destruction of Babylon, aka the United States. And in 1877, that man was born, Wallace Fard Muhammad. According to the NOI, Wallace was Allah himself in the flesh. And not only that, but he was the most powerful God in history, aside from the one who created the universe, of course. Now, you might be noticing a huge problem here. This guy is not black. Like, he's clearly Italian or something. And yeah, that's kind of a huge plot hole, honestly. According to Louis Farrakhan, though, Fard was black, and the reason for his Caucasoid-like appearance was that so he could blend into any group. But it's impossible to confirm the truth about this man's identity because he is one of the most mysterious people in history, and I am not exaggerating. There have been entire books dedicated to trying to figure out this guy's true identity. If you ask the Nation of Islam, he's from Mecca. According to the FBI, he's from Portland, and his US Census papers say he's from New Zealand. Others say he's from Pakistan or Turkey, and even his real name isn't known because he went by a number of different names, including Wallace D. Farad, Muhammad Ali, and Willie Ford. All in all, he had 58 different aliases, and he's been in and out of prison for various crimes. Either way, it doesn't really matter. In the early 1930s, Fard somehow materialized in Detroit and started dropping knowledge bombs on the city's black residents. After a little while, he started to pick up a decent amount of followers, including one Elijah Poole, who would later be known as Elijah Muhammad, a prophet in the Nation of Islam. In 1934, Fard would completely disappear after one of his followers killed somebody. Robert Harris, a high-ranking official in the Nation of Islam, killed a man by hitting him on the head with a tire iron and then stabbing him in the heart on an altar as a sacrifice to God. The police blamed Fard for the murder, and he briefly went to jail before completely dropping off the face of the earth. Or should I say, rising up off the face of the earth, because according to Elijah Muhammad, the messenger of God himself, Fard boarded a giant spaceship called the Mother Plane and left Earth to go do some God stuff.
The Mother Plane is a planet-sized spacecraft that will eventually come back to annihilate the white race. This is the same craft that Ezekiel saw in the Bible and mistook for an angel. All of the UFOs and flying saucers people keep seeing, those are just smaller ships that live inside the Mother Plane.
Wallace Fard Muhammad will soon return on the mothership and bring the end of the white race. So guys, I'm sorry, but if you're white, your days are numbered.
You, Yakub, are the bearer of 9,999 diseases.
Now guys, I was originally going to end the video here, but just when I thought I knew everything there was to know about Yakub, my world got turned upside down again. I learned about a book called The Holy Tablets that holds even more knowledge about Yakub. Now, I tried to buy this book off Amazon.com, but it costs about $900 American, which is a small price to pay for divine knowledge, but I owe so much money in back taxes and child support, I couldn't possibly afford it. Fortunately, after hours of scouring the deep web, I was able to find a PDF of the Holy Tablets. And honestly, I had a hard time understanding it, so I tried to reach out to Oki again, but unfortunately he had been arrested for emulating Nintendo games, so I was on my own for this one. The Holy Tablets were written by a guy named Malachi Z. York, the founder of the Nawubian Nation. According to Wikipedia, York is a black supremacist and also a convicted child and pedophile. Now, this could be true or could just be more Yakubian propaganda, so I'll leave it up to you to decide. Malachi Z. York took the story of Yakub and injected it with meth. I think that's the best way to describe it, okay? If you thought what we've been talking about so far is crazy, you ain't seen shit. So buckle up, because it's gonna be a wild ride. The ancestors of black people originated a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away on the planet Risk. These were godlike beings called the Anunnaki or the Elohim. At some point, a demon called Shaitan, or Satan, along with 200 of his fallen angels, set off a nuclear bomb on Risk, which destroyed the ozone layer. But the Anunnaki scientists figured out that they could create an artificial ozone layer using gold. But they quickly realized there was a huge problem. There wasn't enough gold on Risk to sustain the atmosphere. So they created a giant planet-sized spacecraft called Nibiru, which traveled around the universe gathering gold to power the shield. On one of these routine trips, Nibiru accidentally collided with the planet Neptune, which set it off course, hurtling towards the planet Tiamat. The leader of Tiamat, an alien known as Kingu, was alarmed by the giant spacecraft and waged an intergalactic war with the Anunnaki, which they lost. Some of the Anunnaki got together and rebuilt the Earth. They created oceans, rivers, and trees. And since Tiamat's original native population was killed off, they also created animals, which eventually evolved into our ancestors, Homo erectus. The Anunnaki then decided to splice Homo erectus DNA with their own, thus creating modern man. Or should I say, the modern black man. White people don't come around until much later. Now, the first humans actually had magical powers like telepathy and telekinesis, but after Cain killed his brother Abel, the Anunnaki removed the gland in the brain responsible for these powers and nerfed the humans' power levels substantially. Soon after that, the Anunnaki started using the humans as slaves to mine gold for their shield back home, and also to build them monuments like the pyramids. Okay, so let's fast forward a couple 100,000 years to around 6000 BC. Now, as we are all well aware, the Earth is hollow, and beneath the surface is another world called Agartha, inhabited by multiple different races. If you didn't know this, you should probably pay attention in history class, or just watch my video about it. One of these races was the Shiuk, who were descended from the Riskians that I told you about earlier. They kind of look like Ethiopians with those big ass foreheads. Another race was the Taros, who look like Coneheads from the movie Coneheads. The king of the Taros gave his daughter to the king of the Shiuk to marry, but she hated him, so she ran off with the king's brother instead and went to live on the surface, where they settled in the city of Mecca, and they had a child together. His name? Yakub. Except in this book it's spelled Yaaqub for some reason. Because he was constantly mocked for the size of his head, Yakub became hateful and resentful of the surface dwellers. This is when an evil race of aliens from the planet Pleiades telepathically gave Yakub the idea to create his own race that would take over the world and enslave the surface-dwelling black people. Yakub started preaching to the people of Mecca that they could rule over the entire earth if they followed him, and soon all the people who used to make fun of him were now his disciples. All the women that used to laugh at his head now wanted to give him head. The king of Mecca was threatened by Yakub's cult and threw him and all of his followers in prison. But when all the prisons in Arabia started to get full, the king made a deal with them. He would spare their lives, but they had to leave the Arabian Peninsula. So Yakub took 59,999 of his followers, got on boats, and started sailing around Africa. But Yakub was too eager to start his experiment. He couldn't even wait to find a suitable location to build a lab or anything. So he started experimenting right then on the boat. He started banging his female followers and getting them pregnant. He would keep the lighter-skinned babies and throw the darker-skinned ones overboard. When word got out what Yakub was doing, many of his followers abandoned him. By the time they got to their final destination, the island of Patmos, 95% of Yakub's original followers had abandoned him. But that's okay, he didn't need them. As long as he had his most loyal followers, he could continue his plan. Once on Patmos, he started passing eugenics laws. From here on, it's pretty much the same story as the Nation of Islam version, so I'll just skip to the end. Yakub died at the age of 150 after one of his brains exploded, but he passed his ideas and techniques on to his followers, who continued his work. It took another 500 years, but they eventually completed their experiment and created a race that were, quote, mentally and physically weak and wicked. From there, this new race of albinoids, as they were called, were taught tricknology and went out and caused chaos throughout the world. But the rule of the Yakubians, it's all part of the plan. This was all predicted by the 24 wise elder scientists in the inner earth. They also predicted that a savior would come from the heavens and bring forth a new era of peace and prosperity, where the Ebenoid race would rule the earth once again. Or at least the surface of it. That promised savior is Malachi Z. York, who was sent to Earth to end the Luciferian reign of the white man. But unfortunately, he got a little sidetracked and started diddling kids, and is now in prison for 135 years. I'm not really sure if that was part of the wise elder scientist plan. You know, guys, a few weeks ago, when I first discovered the origin of my race, I was pretty upset. I was depressed. I was spiraling down a road of drugs and gooning and Fortnite. But I've come to a realization that no matter where you come from, you should always be proud of who you are. That's why I've decided to embrace my Yakubian heritage, and I've even changed my profile picture on Twitter to the creator himself. And I urge my fellow Yakubians to do the same. Okay, guys, so I can already smell the racism that's going to be in the comments section, and I just want to say racism is not tolerated on this channel. Unless it's against Bulgarians, then it's encouraged. Now, obviously, I realize that the beliefs of the Nation of Islam are racist themselves, but you gotta understand, these beliefs didn't just come out of nowhere. They were a reaction to oppression. And at the end of the day, you know, we all believe some wacky stuff, especially the Mormons. Just kidding, Mormons. I love you, Mormons. Please stop ringing my doorbell, though.